When you've got a new employee starting or about to start in your business, how much time do you spend thinking about what might be running through their mind leading up to them starting and during the first few days of them starting? There can be a lot of uncertainty that goes on in their mind. In this video, we're going to share with you some of those thought processes and give you 5 tips on how to structure your onboarding process to get them up and running, get them productive and feeling successful sooner, which is good for them and good for your business. And we've got a special treat for you in this video because you're not going to have to just listen to me. We're bringing in the big guns, bringing in Melina, who's our HR specialist, often working behind the scenes, but I've dragged her out and put her in front of the camera to try and untap all the genius inside her mind. So let's see what she's got to share with us. All right, so here we are with our HR guru, Melina, going to help us with some tips on onboarding employees. We all know, well, maybe we don't know how important it is to onboard people. Maybe let's start with that, Melina. Why is it important to have some kind of program or some kind of intention around how we bring people on in our businesses? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think, first and foremost, the reason we hire people in organizations is because we want to benefit from their skill set or their personality or whatever they can bring to the table. And you want that kind of to be done in as little a time frame as possible to get them up to speed and contributing to the organization. And once you've spent all of that money and time recruiting and finding the candidate that you want to join your team, if they aren't onboarded in a way that makes them feel like a part of the team, that it's kind of an inclusive and intentional process, you more often than not are going to lose those employees, well before, even the 1 year mark, which is kind of an entire waste of resources and time and effort, and really can fracture a team.
So if we know it's important to do it, and I think you had some stats around retention rates. What are some of the numbers that people could relate to?
Yeah, so as far as new employees are concerned, we know that new employees are like 69% more likely to stay with an organization for 3 years if they feel they've been onboarded properly, and an additional 58% of employees will stay even beyond that 3-year mark. And that all comes down to the first critical weeks on the job and how well they integrated into the culture. And in addition to that, you've got up to a 50% boost in productivity from those employees right off the bat when they feel that onboarding has been done appropriately.
Yeah, cool. And I know it's just you think about it from the employee's point of view, which sometimes not everyone does, because they're thinking about, okay, I've got this person joining the organisation because we need to get stuff done and we're growing or whatever it is. But if you put yourself in the shoes of the employee, they're thinking, have I made a good decision? Is this going to work out well for me? So I guess the onboarding helps with alleviate some of those fears and make them feel like they've made a good decision. So I know you've got 5 tips for us. So let's dive in. What's number 1?
So as far as the tips go, number 1 is essentially to start early. So the onboarding process starts well before that employee's first day on the job. So that's, including, welcome packages, making sure that you're contacting them, giving them critical paperwork to complete before they start, throwing in a personal touch, like, sending a photo to them in a welcome email with any members of the team or any members of the organization they'll be working with, and it could be something as simple as, just holding a handwritten sign that says, welcome, Bill, we're looking forward to meeting you. Something that makes them feel like they are going towards something welcoming. And clearing a lot of the really monotonous paperwork off the table before they walk in the door. So they can walk in the door with a fresh slate, kind of knowing what to expect from a little bit about the culture of the organization. And
Sorry, I was going to say, and I guess things like if they're if they need business cards, making sure you've got those printed ahead of time, not, we'll get onto that. Or if they've got a desk, and make sure that's all set up and it's all ready to go.
which obviously you got to do ahead of time.
Absolutely. And that's kind of like the second tip, which is kind of like structure their first couple of days correctly. And that's a very good point, is making sure that they have, key card access, or, a telephone extension, or a uniform, or a name badge, or whatever it happens to be in your organization that employee needs to be successful, that is done, and they aren't scrambling the day of or wondering, oh gosh, like how do I get into my computer here? Because all of that makes a huge impact into, how much effort they feel the organization has put forth to welcome them as part of the team. If somebody sits down at their desk and they don't even have a pen to write on, or a piece of paper to write on, it kind of feels like they're an imposition into something that's already running smoothly. So structuring the first couple of days correctly, maybe don't have them come in first thing Monday morning if that's the busy time for your organization. Make sure that in some cases it might be appropriate to even, have them come in, a half day on the first day, and like pay them to stay home and complete paperwork or read employee manuals or, other documents in the morning, so that they can kind of have time to digest it. And by the time they arrive at your business, people have time to sit down and meet with them and really make them feel welcome.
Yeah, so making sure you've pre-thought out the structure that's going to work best for your organisation and help that person feel like they're coming into something and they feel valued, and they've been thought about. Yeah, cool. And what's point number 3?
So point number 3 was to be a good host, right? And I always like to say, think of yourself as a party host, right? If you are inviting somebody over to your home, they've never been there, they might not know other people at your party, are you just going to open up the door and say, oh, hey, come on in, drinks are over there, have a good time? Or are you going to kind of like show them where the bathroom is and say, oh, here, come meet Jane over here, she likes rock climbing and so do you, are you really, you want to think about what can I do to kind of, help this person along. And I love an example that occurred to me a number of years ago, and it made total sense when you think about, entrepreneurs and people who have worked there, hiring managers. They've been at the organization a long time, so they kind of know how things go. They know the rules of the road as far as like how that organization works. And something as simple as somebody walking into a lunchroom and they open up the cupboard to get a coffee, and all of the mugs are like, world's best grandma, and all of these mugs, and they're like, oh geez, like, was I supposed to bring my own mug, or can I grab any one of these mugs, or am I like crossing a social line here by grabbing somebody else's mug? And just having that kind of like, I don't know what to do, and nobody else in the organization would even think twice about it because they've been there so long, right? So just having the forethought. And a really good tip that I tell people, when you're thinking about being a good host is, if you cross your arms, like everybody has a way that they cross their arms, right? And that's comfortable to them. And if you have to think about, try to cross your arms the opposite way from what you normally do. Like, it takes a lot of thought. And once you've done that, you're completely uncomfortable. You're like, oh, I don't like this feeling at all. And that's what your new employees feel like, right? So that's something I tell people to kind of practice and think, okay, what am I missing here? Aside from like, lunchroom stuff, where the washrooms are, like, what do I need to do to be a good host to introduce them? Do I need to take them out to lunch with a group of people? Just thinking about those things that you might ordinarily miss.
It's really about putting yourself in the employee's shoes and being empathetic to how they're going to feel and what are going to be some things you can do to help them feel more comfortable. Yeah, that's awesome. Tip number 4.
So tip number 4 is wherever possible, and even in very small organizations, this is possible, is to assign a buddy, assign a point person to kind of help this employee get through the first couple of weeks. And a lot of the times when you have new employees in an organization, they might feel they're in a situation where it's trial by fire, and they just kind of need to hop in with both feet and get the toes a little warm, and just, they're on their own. because there is somewhat of a reluctance to kind of ask the wrong question or ask a question that might be interpreted to not be a great question, right? So I think, having that point person that, saying to them, look, this person is your point person. Like, no question is too small. By all means, they're your go-to, right? So having that level of comfort, and that could be somebody in their work unit, it could be their supervisor, it could be just somebody that they can feel comfortable with and say, hey, look, I know this might be a dumb question, but X, Y, or Z. So not only that, but on the flip side, having that person follow the new employee in terms of like check in once in a while, like, teach them how to ask kind of those probing questions to see, how those first couple of weeks are doing. Because if something starts to go off the rails, then having somebody who's in constant contact with that employee who can maybe help correct course, or maybe, fix these small things that might otherwise make them think they've made a mistake and start looking for a new job, right? So having that open communication and having that person they can feel comfortable with.
Is it important that that person is someone who hasn't been involved in the hiring? And what I mean by that is, the person or people who have been involved in the hiring decision are sort of the powers to be, if you like. They granted the position, so they in theory have the power to ungrant the position. If you've got someone who hasn't been involved in that, that's the point person, then would they feel safer asking some different questions, or be more open and transparent possibly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there is some merit to that for sure. It's important to remember, your onboarding should kind of be four things. Like, it should be operational, it should be strategic, but it should also be social and intentional, right? So wherever you can kind of form those relationships that aren't kind of a direct report or a supervisor employee relationship, will help strengthen what an employee feels about kind of social aspects and belonging in that culture. So definitely there are some benefits by pairing them with somebody who might be kind of on an equal plane with them versus kind of that downflowing relationship or that one-sided relationship. That said, though, that's not always possible in all organizations. Mm-hmm. So even if that's a case, I think, you kind of generally have a kind of a grassroots feeling in smaller organizations anyway, where you kind of have a little more flex in terms of, how those supervisor-employee relationships are structured. So it all depends on how the organization works and what that culture looks like.
And I guess the size of the organization too. If you've got 2 employees, then it may not be possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, and tip number 5.
So tip number 5 is actually to give them a little bit of space, right? So, once you've kind of checked all the boxes, got your paperwork sorted out payroll, they understand how everything works, they understand where everything is it's kind of critical to also, even though they have that buddy system and you have somebody being a checkpoint and checking in on that person, giving them some space to kind of really assimilate into their environment and to be comfortable in their workspace and personalize their workspace, and really kind of just digest over the first couple of weeks. Having that space that they can do that is going to get them to be thinking a little more creatively, making better decisions. There's a lot of benefits to just kind of, they're bombarded with information in the first couple of days. Once they've had time to like digest it all, then they can kind of take a step back and think, okay, exactly where do I fit here? Where is my place here? And then they can find that a little easier if they actually do have some space and don't feel like they're being overlooked or somebody's always got their eye over their shoulder, that type of thing.
It's a real balance, it sounds like, in terms of being the host, making sure they've got everything they need, checking in, but also, not smothering them with the love, or giving them some space to find their own place, as you said it. Yeah, great. So 5 very important tips there. Melina, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. And perhaps we'll get you on for some other HR topics. I know it's a very much top of mind issue with small business owners. There you have it, folks.
All right. Thank you so much.